All right, welcome into another special edition of the Greg Hudson Show. Excited about our guest today, Coach Hud. You've gone to the Rolodex and you have delivered once again. Tell everybody about this Hall of Famer and Super Bowl champion you're bringing on the show today.
That's right. Aaron Taylor, had the great fortune of coaching him at Notre Dame, where he was an All-American, first-round pick of the Packers, Super Bowl champion, college football Hall of Famer, and most people in this area would know him from seeing his big mug on TV on CBS. He's in the studio with Neuheisel and the crew, and he does a really good job. I'm really excited to have him on here. I've spent a lot of time with Aaron. Aaron's a special human being, and we're going to have a great conversation.
This is the Greg Hudson Show.
Welcome, everybody. We have been graced with the presence of Aaron Taylor, who I think the world of. Aaron's a Notre Dame grad, great football player, great human being, All-American, all everything. I learned how to coach offensive line because the guy teaching me said, watch him when he blocks, because then that's how you do it right. So that I was ahead of the curve that way with Joe Moore, but Aaron's had a great career, got a Super Bowl ring, and now he's a big star that we see on TV. He's probably going to be on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood one day from his broadcast career. And he's been really, really a guy that I could always talk with, and especially as our journeys have continued. And we're just really glad that you're joining us today, AT.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. The only Hall of Fame I'll be in is for the Eyebrow Hall of Fame. So if you guys can peep those out, but those suckers are pretty bushy and thick. So that's my best bet.
Is it makeup?
Not today, brother.
No
It's
makeup
all
today?
natural.
Well, being that we're over here on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast, and not a lot of people would remember much of your playing career because you're so old. But, tell us a little bit about Aaron Taylor and the football player, the person, the TV personality. Tell Eastern North Carolina a little bit about AT.
Oh, well, back on November 14th, 1972, it was a cold, rainy night. And I grew up in the Bay Area with divorced parents. Early on, things were pretty rough for me. Parents divorced at 2. There was physical, sexual abuse at 5, some abandonment at 8. Moved around every 2 years. So I was always a new kid in school, meeting new friends, new rules, new teachers, new everything. And that was pretty challenging. But then the good stuff came. I got out of my own way and went from being a DNF student where I was smoking weed and drinking every day to playing the sport of feetball. And that was kind of the first indication that I was given something that other people didn't have. Because I went to De La Salle High School in Concord, and it's a storied program, and everybody there worked hard. I didn't. I had to learn how to do that. But the harder I worked, the better I got. Everybody worked hard, but they got this much better. I got that much better. And it just stayed that way. And those were the things that I think I didn't appreciate at the time. But looking back, like, I was born with things that other people didn't have. So that success continued. I went from D's and F's to A's and B's. Had an offer to go anywhere in the country that I wanted to go, but I chose to go to the University of Notre Dame. And a big reason why is because they graduated 97% of their student athletes. That was also year 1 of the embassy contract. And I wasn't the best student athlete in the world, but I knew I wasn't 3%. So just by going to Notre Dame, I was going to have a college degree, and that was important to me. And they happened to have this O-line coach named Joe Moore that I didn't know anything really about. He seemed really nice when he came to my living room. I didn't realize that he would both torment me and mold me over the next 4 years and have maybe the singular greatest impact on my life other than my mother from what he taught me to do, for what he helped me to understand I was capable of, to get me to be at my best and push through my perceived limitations. And all of that was just on instinct, because when I was on my recruiting trip at Notre Dame, it was December 2nd, 1989, I believe, 2 years removed from the national championship, it felt familiar. The people were good. There weren't a lot of egos there. I think 22 of the 25 guys on our first trip ended up signing, and we all bonded really quickly. So That's kind of the cliff notes of the fast forward, but that's kind of where you and I came to
Right.
meet at that
Yeah.
point.
That's the one thing I love about Aaron. You can ask him a question and you're going to get complete transparency, honesty, and he's going to tell you something that may save your life one day. You never know. He's been through a lot and he's endured, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have him on the show here, because our premise is obviously a sports theme, which connects us, but also the mental health backstory, which you got into right away. When you were in that transition from the F to the D and you started realizing B to C, was there somebody in particular that helped you flip that switch?
Man, I don't know. It was my mom, and I had been out. She was a pediatric ICU nurse at Children's Hospital in Oakland for 20, 25 years. I don't remember, but she would have to leave our house about 10 o'clock to get to work on time. And she'd leave right at 10 and I'd leave about 10:07. So she went out to work and I went out to work. And there was a night that she beat me home in the morning. She got home at 7 and I got home at 7:15, 7:30, and I got kicked out of the house. And that was when I came back, got pretty old sleeping on my buddy's floor and using his underwear as socks or socks as pillows and just putting clothes together. And I'm like, man, this isn't what I want. But I think I was so driven by fitting in and being a part of. I was biracial, so I never felt black enough, never felt white enough, felt too black, felt too white. I never felt comfortable in my own skin. So that's what was underneath everything. I just wanted to be a part of, and I felt apart from. So drugs and alcohol was the easiest way for me to to hang out and, lower the bar because there was none for acceptance there. So when I came back home, my mom asked me, what I wanted to do. And I was like, I want to play pro football, which was ridiculous because I didn't even play tackle football. I didn't play Pop Warner because I might have been too heavy for my age group and not old enough for my weight class. Classic tweener.
Yeah.
And she walked me back with what it would take for me to get drafted and then to go to college, and were grades important, and how would I get to college? Does everybody get a scholarship? And she connected the dots between choices, actions, and consequences. And I finally was able to connect that linear chain. So, Greg, that's really the moment that it flipped. And as soon as I shifted my energy towards something that was productive, everything changed. It was effortless from that standpoint. I had to work my ass off, but it just, the accomplishments, the ease, the progress, the way that I was able to climb and separate myself from that respect, man, was easy.
What was the age when the drugs and alcohol started to when it kind of ended and your focus kind of changed to football and academics?
It started probably when I was 13. I had my first drink, and it involved two girls. One of them had stolen a fifth of vodka, and they had a big old handle, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew what girls were. So they said that they had this stuff, and I drank it. It tasted awful. But the second it hit my system, I remember distinctly having the thought, holy smokes, what is this? Where has this been? Mm-hmm. And it was instant that when that substance hit my body, all of a sudden I felt confident. All of a sudden I felt funny. All of a sudden I felt handsome. All of a sudden I didn't feel weird and awkward, even if I did weird and awkward things. And it became very quickly the elixir to all that ailed me, and I couldn't get enough of that shit in my body.
Right.
So that took place all the way through this morning because I'm drunk right now.
Oh, good. When'd you start? 9? This leads to a good point that you brought up about you couldn't identify with yourself as black or white, which had to probably be just driving your self-confidence down. And so that drink was your confidence booster.
Yeah.
And that's what it became for you.
Yeah,
that
no
gave
question.
You an identity.
Yeah, buddy. It gave me an identity. And it's funny you bring that up because I've come to understand that I didn't drink because the way it made me feel. I drank and used drugs the way I did because of the way it prevented me from feeling.
You didn't like yourself sober.
Yeah, I wanted to be pain-free. And when it was just me and my thoughts and this weird-ass awkward body and being chubby and being a new kid, not knowing, like, it was torture. So I just started to self-medicate. And it it was there for me, and that worked until it didn't. And I'm sure we'll talk about causes and conditions is where we're at now, but what the consequences of that were.
Right.
It was a really inefficient way for me to create the life and outcome that I wanted. And it had to get so bad where the fear of staying the same finally was superseded by my desire to have things be different.
Exactly.
And I was given the gift of desperation, and it wasn't a rock bottom. I had a pretty high bottom, thankfully, but I just got sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, man. I had everything on paper I needed that you would think to be the American dream. I played in the NFL. I had a Super Bowl ring. I had a couple coffee cans of money buried. I was an All-American, a future college football Hall of Famer, but it was the lowest point in my life. And that was the greatest gift I ever got, because I realized all this stuff that we're fed and force-fed and reinforced about what we need to be happy. If I just had this, if I could just do that, if only this were different, then that was bullshit for me. And I knew it. And I got that at 28. And that was the single greatest gift I've ever received that God gave me, because I didn't have to wait till I was 65 to realize how far my aim was off, how far my trajectory was away from who I really was, what was really waiting on me. And it took what it took, and it takes what it takes. And I'm grateful for what that looked like for me.
That's awesome. You probably understand the term that I couldn't accept it, or couldn't understand it, is when I first started going to meetings, when I heard somebody say that they're a grateful alcoholic. I was like, what do you mean? How can you? And until you get past the depths of where you got to come out of, and you get to the clarity and the purification of your soul, you don't realize just how good you can feel. You don't know that, and I didn't. And when all of a sudden you get to Notre Dame, and I know what you went through those 4 years. I know what every day in practice was like. How did you get through those 4 years? Well, I know it's so time consuming. I mean, you really don't have any time.
Yeah, and you don't have a choice, man. It's you have a very clear objective on what you want to do, both as a team and individually. Win the national championship, get drafted, and play in the NFL. It's like a binary set of goals. Graduating was important, but a tertiary third one that felt automatic as long as I did what I needed to do. Again, I wasn't 3%. So I want to go back and share a little bit of a story, because this is kind of a theme that showed up that I would build upon once I got to Notre Dame. There was a moment after all these invisible doors started to open, and I was able to go to De La Salle. Mm-hmm. And it was after the first practice, and I had never played organized football. I went out my freshman year, broke my ankle, was on IR right out of the gate, and those injuries in football would become a theme for me. Played a little bit my sophomore year, but it wasn't the same. So when I got to De La Salle, I had a lot of bad habits. I had no technique, and I got crucified, man. I thought my first name was God damn it. If the play was going left, I went right. If the play was going right, I went left. I seemingly couldn't do anything right. I put my thigh pads in backwards. It was like, and I got yelled at for 2 straight hours and 2 straight practices. So for 4 hours, my insecurities of not being able to do anything right and have any intrinsic value or worth was just getting reinforced. So I get home that day after practice. I get a little emotional telling this story. And I walk in the house. My mom's like, hey, how'd it go? And I didn't say anything. I just slammed the door and I went into my room. And I was crying, Greg. I was crying. She had changed jobs. We had moved. We had done all these different things just to give me the opportunity. And I made it one day. Yeah. And I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I can't go back. Like, they're yelling at me, and I didn't know what I was doing. And it was awful. And she said, she let me get it all out. And she said, you got a decision to make. You got to figure out if what you want is worth the price that you might have to pay for it. Are you going to let those men be right and take away your dream? Or are you going to go for it? So it doesn't matter to me, but it's up to you, and you got a decision to make. And she shut the door. And I tell you what, man, I sat there on the edge of the bed not knowing what I was going to do, bro. Right. I had no idea. How could I go back and face what I faced there again with those men that I didn't even really know yelling at me? And I went to sleep late. And somehow, some way, I got up and I went back to practice. And I got my ass chewed again. And I got yelled at again. But I made a couple blocks. In the afternoon practice, I made a couple more. And then went back the next day and I made a couple more and I made a couple more. As it turns out, I was pretty fucking good at football. I just didn't know it yet.
Right.
And I was this close to staying in bed that day because I was petrified. But something deep inside of me that's not mine, it was given to me, got me up out of bed that day. And it's always been there, that resilience, that belief that somehow, some way, I'm going to find a way to make it through no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's a gift. And I used that gift at Notre Dame when we did the toughness drill that day. It was me against 3 defenders.
Oh, yeah.
Many times as we could go until we were throwing up. And
a drill not used these days, by the way, anymore.
Is it called the toughness drill?
We had
that's what he called it when Holtz brought his damn golf cart. Joe, what are you doing, Joe? Practice didn't start for 2 hours. We're seeing new stuff.
Here,
block on Saturday. We'll block on Tuesday.
Hey, Taylor, let me see you block the golf cart. Coach, put it in drive.
Oh, my gosh. But my senior year, there's this rite of passage, Jonathan, where you go out with Coach Moore for burgers and beers. And you got to relive all the things. And it's like you graduate in the old line room, if you will, with this, mentor of yours that you plotted to kill for 4 years, that you're finally glad that you survived. And he asked me about that day. And he said, you remember the toughness drill? That day where I had 2 guys that dove straight at the ground, a linebacker that pushing ahead, and I told you to block them? It's like, yeah. He's like, I did that? I'm like, no, Coach. He said, I wanted you to know that in the fourth quarter of a game, when you're tired and we needed a first down to ice the game, and we called the run behind you, that no matter how tired you were, that you would always know that you had 5 more in you.
Yeah.
And he said, I wanted you to know that when you got to the NFL and maybe things didn't go right, or you got hurt, or you lose a parent in your life, when the deck is stacked against you, that you would always remember that day when you looked at me with those puppy dog eyes. And I'd say, 5 more, Taylor. Give me 5 good ones. You're done. You'd give them to me. And I'd tell you 5 more, and then 5 more, and then 5 more, that you would remember that day and always know that you had 5 more in you.
Yeah.
And that theme, man, sitting on the edge of the bed in Loftus in the indoor facility with the toughness drill, when I walked in the first room of recovery, when I lost my mom.
Yeah.
Having 5 more in us, the power of the human spirit is so strong, and we're capable of so much more than we think and believe. And Joe's gift was getting us to understand that we're capable of much more than our perceived limitations. And for me, that and recovery go hand in hand, and it's just one of the many ways that the power of the shared experience has been transformational and has changed my life.
It's obvious, and it's almost like God makes it so difficult on you that you have no other choice but to get drawn towards him, towards that higher power that you're missing in your life. So you have that emotion that you're feeling like now, and you can remember those feelings. If you're going through college now with everything we didn't have the internet and this, what would you say a kid like you needs during that undergrad experience like you had to help him? That's missing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work in this space with student athletes. I had a podcast called MindFlex with Aaron Taylor that just released this week. And what we found is student athletes in general, across all genders, socioeconomic, Ivy League to, Power 5, there's 2 critical things that student athletes today lack. One is resilience, and that's a belief that they can deal with life on life's terms. And the other is this sense of connection. Even the student athletes that are part of team sports, and there's a lot of factors for it, but connection and being away from our phones and communicating face to face and being part of something greater than ourselves is a critical piece and element to our existence. Our brains crave the communal effect and social acceptance. And we're growing up in a world where that's becoming harder and harder, We also have single sport club kids that have always been the cream of the crop, have always
Right.
elevated, and then they all get to college and the playing field's level for the first time, and they're wilting. They haven't had the gift of failure. They haven't had the gift of hardship and adversity. And I think societally, somehow we've gone from wanting things better for our kids to wanting things easier for them.
Right.
We want to microwave everything. We want to use Chat GPT. We want answers. We want instant outcomes without paying service and honoring the process that those outcomes require, because you get to a certain point in your life where you don't have Wi-Fi. You can't
Yeah.
rely on Chat GPT to tell you what to do when your baby's born and has a tumor and you're in the hospital, or you lose a parent. There's no quick fixes for those sort of things. The only way out is through. When you walk into your room of recovery and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but you can't get your way out of where you're at, and you can't see or even think that it's possible to stop using drugs and alcohol on a daily basis, there's no answers there. We need the human spirit. We need to talk and see and hear from people that have gone through what we've gone through so that we know that we're not alone. We need to hear what they did about what happened to them so that we know that there's actions that maybe we can take. And then we need to hear what it's like now and how those actions worked for them. That can't be done in comfort. That can't be done on a computer. You have to go through the school of hard knocks to get those things. And interestingly, I think because of where we're at with these student athletes, to your point, Greg, like God and faith and spirituality is often the last thing some of us try, but often the first thing that works.
Yeah.
And I think when people get sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's real interesting how faithful we become. And I watched it with one of my kids who's going through a medical incident and finally was able to get past that. And in the bathroom behind the closed door was saying, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God." It's the most I had ever heard him outwardly connect with his higher power.
Right.
And I think it's just part and parcel to the way this deal's designed, and I wouldn't change a minute of anything I've gone through because of what it's meant on the other side.
What are some of the success tips that you give people to help them, that anybody that's struggling, not just a student athlete or anybody? What is the Aaron Taylor success tip or two?
Don't do anything I did. That's step one. I basically ruled out everything that didn't work, and then what was ever's left, I was like, that's probably the answer. I think critical to brain and mind health and how we feel on a day-to-day basis, our well-being, is that our life experience is something that we can control, and that how we experience life 5 years, 5 months, 5 minutes from right now is something that we can largely choose. But in order for that to happen, we've got to change the way that we think. We've got to change the things that we believe. We've got to change the things that we say and do. And for some of us, that means we've got to let go of assuming that we have all the answers. Because 110% of my best efforts to try to live a pain-free, happy, joyous life was debauchery and misery. So the simple act of shifting our focus away from what we lack or away from what we want, away from what we're afraid of, to what it is we have through gratitude, to what it is we aspire to be through goals, to what it is we get to enjoy on a daily basis, those simple things can prime our brain to drop chemicals that reinforce how good we've got it. So I've got a gratitude practice. I've got
He's going deep here.
So this is what I call a God box. And these are all the things that my wife and I have been worried about, that we didn't know what the outcome and the answer was going to be. So I write these thank you letters to God with gratitude. Dear God, thank you for this moment. I also want to thank you for all of the blessings in my life. I also want to say thank you for holding my fear and anxiety about my marriage with Lena, the T-shirts and the presentation and the clinic. I'm now willing to turn these over to you for the next 24 hours so that you can hold them and I can be set free to enjoy the incredible and abundant life that you've given me. Please take and hold my fear and anxiety, God, and set me free to enjoy the joy in my life. I love you. Thank you, and I appreciate you. Let your will, not mine, be done. Help me to relax and to be at peace. I'm willing to turn it over to you now. Thank you. Amen, Aaron.
Yeah, man, that's strong.
So,
People don't realize where people are emotionally. I mean, all they see is the outside, the structure, and you see Aaron Taylor, you don't realize, everybody's hurting. When you talked about the struggle with your child was going through, how did you deal with that as a parent in recovery? Did you suddenly see different triggers or different feelings that you were having at that time?
well, a couple things. It was serious, but not life-threatening.
Right.
So he was very uncomfortable. He was in a ton of pain, and very quickly, the invisible doors opened, and he got treatment, and there was a hole in the schedule, and he was able to have a procedure, and boom, boom, boom. So I wasn't worried about his overall well-being. I knew that we were probably going to win that game, if you will.
Right.
So I was able to step back and focus on compassion and comfort, just helping him understand that he wasn't alone. And I could see, and I knew that he was going to be all right, but he couldn't.
Right.
And he didn't have that book of data or that understanding of the way the body works. And he had a very limited perspective. So I was there, and it was my wife and I my role was to keep him comfortable and to reassure him, to comfort him, just so that the amount of time and the intensity and the duration of the discomfort was minimized. And I kept a pretty level head and was laughing in the moment. And that was Thursday of last week. So October 17th, right? So we were on site at USC Penn State, which is odd because my company has never done 2 remote studio shows in the same year. This is the first year they did it. This is the first year I'm on the show, and it's right up the street from my house.
Right.
So I got to be home for this, whereas 15 years prior to, I couldn't have done it.
You'd have been in New York.
So on Friday morning, I had to drive up, and I looked at my wife and I said, I got to let go. And she said, okay. And boom, I just started crying.
Yeah.
And bawling and purging all the energy that I had to hold on to keep him comfortable and safe. And I wasn't worried about him, but it was like you're watching your child in agony.
Yeah.
I had this profound sense of helplessness. And as I'm recanting this to her, I just at the very end, I said, baby, we got it so good. We got it so good. We got it so good. I'm here. Our neighbors, the CEO of a hospital here in town, and like it just fell into place.
Right.
So the elements there are in the moment to be present, to be faithful, to, when appropriate, to not share how I was feeling with him, but to still feel my feelings, to get what's on the inside, on the outside, to share with another person, with my wife, so that she could know what I was going through. And that opened the door for her to fall apart and be messy and take some time so that she could recover on Sunday and Monday when I came home.
Yeah.
And we just bonded. And
right.
So I don't know, man. I just was there for him the best I could, but I was also there for myself. And to his credit, he was so scared. He kept saying, Daddy, I'm so scared. Daddy, I'm so scared. It hurts. I'm so scared. I was like, I know, buddy. I get scared too. Focus on your breath. You can calm your body, even though it's under tremendous stress right now. You can calm your central nervous system, anchor to your breath. You can pray. Let's meditate. And he would do it, and then he'd get fear. I'd see the fear thought go through his head. He'd come back out of it, and I'd invite him to settle back down. And
so you had the surroundings in your brain. You had the wherewithal to use the airplane theory. You put the oxygen mask on yourself first to get your mind right before you could save somebody else.
Yeah, we have to.
Is that something that you obviously you weren't doing when you were 27 and 28 years old with the state you were in then? Is this something that you learned through recovery on how to, encounter those moments?
Yeah, when I was 27 and 28, I was wearing that mask that Laramie Tunsil had on. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't an oxygen mask.
For those that you don't know,
There might have been a picture that surfaced the day before the draft of Laramie Tunsil with a gas mask on that was full of marijuana smoke, reportedly.
man, it was amazing.
I think there. I want to say two things. I think intuitively, there's a part of me that instinctually I can get there faster than the average bear,
Right.
but also what I picked up in recovery and working the steps for 25 plus years, having 2 or 3 different sponsors that all came at it a little bit different ways through there. We're as sick as our secrets. I got to make sure that I'm right or nothing's right. I got to make sure that I'm right with my higher power or nothing's right. And that discernment to know what the next indicated step is, and sometimes it changes minute to minute, I think only comes through being on both sides of those tough conversations, of those tough situations. And I'm at my best when I get out of my own way and I open myself up and I let my intuition, which I feel kind of in my belly cavity, which is a big belly. Maybe that's why I got big intuition. But just say yes and lean into what it is without trying to change it. And I don't do that all the time or perfectly, but when I'm at my best, I can do that. And I did that with our son the last week.
Aaron, you've accomplished a lot on the field, off the field. What are the two things that you think you're most proud of that in your life that stands out to you?
I don't know. I think maybe being the dad that I am. And it hasn't been perfect, but I grew up without mine. I also hired a private investigator to find him before my first son was born, and I found him. And we were able to bury the hatchet, and with a lot of love and compassion and willingness and forgiveness, we now have a relationship and talk 2-3 times a week. I was unmarriable, man. I was 0 for 52 in relationships until I met my wife. And it's been an inordinate amount of work to get myself there. And I was so focused on finding Mrs. Perfect and Mrs. Right that I didn't realize how flawed I was. And once I started on trying to get myself to be Mr. Perfect, boom, she was there. And I had to get out of my own way. So there was a lot of work that went in just to meeting her. And now 16 years later for us to be together and then with our children. I think that's the biggie. And I'm a good teammate, man. I care and I help people. And
Shit, he helped me coach.
man,
You're doing it wrong. Joe wants it done this way. Here's let's switch gears a little bit here, because I was trying to think of this before you came on, and we had talked about this before when I was down in Texas at the A&M game, and you were talking about the mindset of when you were about to begin, say, a show, or you were going to give a speech, or you're going to talk. You gave me a nugget about where you wanted it to be was how your thought process. Can you explain that again to us?
yeah, I Wally pipped one of our analysts and got a chance to call my first NFL game probably 3 years ago. James Lofton. I can out him now, I guess. But it was the moment that I'm waiting for in television, the big breakthrough. And I told my wife, she screamed. She started crying. She's like, "You've wanted this. This is what you wanted. It's right here." And I said, "Baby, I'm going to give you a hug and a kiss and give you the deuces. I'm going to go in the basement. I'm going to watch more film. I'm going to make more calls. I'm going to be more ready than I've ever been for anything in my life. I'll see you later." Boom. And that was on Sunday, the week before. Well, by about Tuesday of that week, she's like, "You open to an observation?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're not handling this so well. Like, you're stressed out. You're not doing stuff around the house. You're really irritable, yelling at everybody." She's like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just, doing what I need to do." And she goes, "Are you open to a suggestion?" And I said, "Yeah." And that's a really great question to give somebody some observations, but ask their permission first. And it disarms any defensiveness. She said,
Right.
are you open to a suggestion? And I said, yeah, I am. It's like every single time you think about what you want to do during the game and how it's going to go and what telestration package, what you're going to say in the open and all those things that you're going to do, instead, close your eyes and focus on how you want to feel afterwards. Picture the moment that you put your game board and your computer into your bag and take your headset off. What's your producer say in your ear right before you take it off? Look at your partner. Do you guys high five? Do you hug? Imagine the ride down in the elevator with the smile on your face, joking at what a great game it was and what a great call you had. Imagine yourself at dinner that night with your friends. Who's there? What are the looks that they're giving? What things are you laughing about? What are they teasing you about? And then that night, the very end, is see yourself as you put your head on the pillow. What's the look on your face? Look closely. Is it resolve? Is it pride? What is it? Every single time, not just once or twice, but every single time you find yourself starting to get nervous, instead, close your eyes and imagine how you want to feel after the event.
Exactly.
Man, I told you on the call, and I'm telling the listener now, it was the best game I ever called. It was in slow motion. It was 3.5 hours of flow state. It was
Yeah.
effortless. I didn't have to go find anything. It all came to me. Whatever I needed was there. And when I look back on what happened there, I was always talented. I always prepped. But for the first time in my life, I was able to get myself out of the way. I was able to get my fear out of the way. I was able to get my anxiety and my insecurity out of the way so that all that was left was my talent and preparation. It was as free as I had ever played. And to this day, it's the best performance enhancing advice I've ever been given. My wife gave it to me in this room at that door that's 6 feet away.
Yeah.
And I got it at 51 years old. And if I had known then what I know now, because, oh, by the way, I'm using it now and I'm having the best studio year I've ever had. I got promoted because since that day I started using that. And every time I get anxious about how I'm going to do, I close my eyes and I imagine how I want to feel after the show. I'll imagine us laughing during the show about what? It doesn't matter. I just see our faces in the emotion. I imagine myself at night going to bed. I listen to comedy instead of one more podcast about one more nugget from this college football team.
Right.
And I start to prime my pump for laughter and fun. And I've shifted my focus away from being successful to joy. And let me tell you what, our success lies underneath our joy. And when we can find a way to put that at the top of the pyramid, everything falls in place.
Powerful advice from your wife there that has obviously made a huge impact. You're never too old, I guess, to change and get advice. But you've made me smile tremendously every time you've gone into your Lou Holtz voice on the podcast. And I got to ask, what kind of impact, advice, what has Coach Holtz meant to you? And give us some more Coach Holtz stories or impersonations, because you're fantastic.
Aaron Taylor. Your ass makes me never want to recruit California again. Get out of my drill, son. You're killing me. Get out. I think it was my sophomore year, late in the year. And this story will kind of characterize what he's meant in his brilliance. And the quarterback comes up underneath center. Blue 52, set hut. And there was a defensive lineman that was in front of me. It was Oliver Gibson. And I go to kill him. And I whiffed, because I took way too big of a first step. I was pissed off and I wasn't relaxed, and I completely whiffed. On the snap of the ball, he comes across the line of scrimmage, bam, hits the back, 2 yards in the backfield, knocks him down. Damn it, Aaron Taylor, get your ass out of my drill. No, coach, I got it. I'm sorry, I'll do it. I'm buckling myself. Get your ass out. So we get out. The backup comes running up. Get your ass out, too. You're not worth a damn either. Run the play again as if Aaron Taylor was in there. So you've got 10 players, 4 offensive linemen. They line up. The tackle lines up next to the center. No, line your ass up exactly the way you ran the play before. So the tackle goes out. So you have tackle, this big space. The rest of the unit, the defense doesn't know what to do. defensive linemen's over space. Run the damn play again. I just spit and lisp, so this is a really realistic impersonation. Blue 52, set hunt. Oliver comes across, hits the back in the backfield, bam, for a 2-yard loss. Holtz comes running up to me, grabs me by the face mask, says, "See, Aaron Taylor? Doesn't matter whether your ass is in there or not. No difference."
Oh, man.
So everybody laughs.
Oh, my God.
But the genius in that was that he was sending the message that what we do matters, that there are people that count on us and that rely on us. And if we don't do our job, somebody else pays the price, and that's not okay. So that's the way that he taught me that lesson, but he also taught it to everybody that was in earshot. And Holtz's genius was that he taught us to be good people and good husbands and good football players most of the time without us ever even realizing what was going on. How we win, the power of our thoughts and our memories with the visualization, going into Loftus, not flinching, these basic frameworks of success that maybe some are his, maybe he borrowed and adopted some, but these timeless facets that I use to this day. And anybody that's ever played with him at South Carolina, at Arkansas, at Notre Dame will all tell the same stories, and we all learn the same lessons. So he wasn't easy to coach for, he wasn't easy to play for, but we all have to give him credit for the men that he helped us to be, and we were successful a hell of a lot more than we weren't as a result.
You know, it's amazing you say the guys from South Carolina. When I took the job with Mace up at Minnesota, I had more guys from the past that you would see at gatherings they would say things about what coach did or coach said. Man, it was identical. I mean, it was the exact same. And I'm sure there was a left guard that went through that same misery.
No question.
On the power play that you didn't pull and block properly.
No question.
Aaron, we talked Joe Moore earlier, obviously a guy that a big enough impact that you helped start the award that's named in his honor. Why did you feel moved to do that, and what kind of person did he really mean to you as well?
Oh, man. Joe Moore was that, tough love father figure that I needed, that believed in me, that was smart enough and confident enough to push me to the brink to and beyond my own limits for my sake and not for his. And I think somehow, some way, as hard as he pushed us and challenged us, intuitively, at least I understood that he wasn't doing that for his sake. He was doing it for ours. And I think, man, it had to be 2012. Kirk Ferentz, who played high school football for him, he's the longest tenured coach at Iowa, as a lot of the listeners may know. He had tried to do something for Coach Moore, and I had some energy around memorializing him somehow because of what he meant to me and to so many other people and to our game and our position, quite frankly. And I was talking with his son, James. They have a football camp the first weekend in June every year out in Pittsburgh, and I always had a reason why I couldn't go. And I would also at the same time have all these talks where I would talk about Joe Moore and get emotional on stage about the impact he made, and there was this disconnect. So I had to throw the flag on me. I committed on the spot to go to the next camp. And in that conversation, and it was June 7th, 2015, we started talking about, didn't Kirk Ferentz start an award, tried to do something? Yeah, wasn't, blah, 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 blah. So that day I went to ESPN.com. I looked at the college football awards. And in that conversation with his son, James, we were just talking about the room and the guys. And it didn't matter whether you were an All-American or a walk-on. We were all the same. Greg lived it. He saw that. That's just the nature of our position, but particularly there. And when I looked at the awards, there were 26 individual awards. And I thought, man, isn't that ironic? We play the consummate team game. The offensive line is the consummate team position. Yet when it's all said and done, we're honoring the individual? Like, that doesn't add up. Boom. That's when the light bulb went off. So we got to figure out a way to have an award that's a team award. It's a unit award that celebrates the toughness and the teamwork that our sport is based upon. That's never been done. Bingo.
Right.
And that's what we set out to do. And we're the only group or unit award in our sport. There was no roadmap. We built the plane after we took off and didn't have landing gear, probably still don't. But we were this refreshing antidote I believe, looking back to this world of, hey, look at me. And that's why our tagline is, I am because of us. That I am because of us is what the rooms of recovery stand by. It's what the sport of football is built on. It's what our families define us as. It's the life blood of what we are societally and communally in our neighborhoods. And I think the offensive line is a great way to represent that. So we take the position a hell of a lot more seriously than we take ourselves as both players and now as an award. And I think that resonates with people, that they can get down and behind the selfless nature and the complete sacrifice of ego and individual success for the greater good. And I think at the end of the day, we're an award that celebrates the best of our game, the best of our country, and honestly, without getting too woo-woo, like the best of our species and what can be accomplished when we all come together for the greater good. And we get that 3.5 hours at a time every Saturday. And at the end of the year, we're just a bunch of fat kids trying to pick our favorite flavor of ice cream. We pick it and we wheel this big ass trophy into a room, and Greg's seen it and he'll see it more. It's the single greatest moment that I've had in sports. It's like that moment where the walk-on gets the scholarship, where it's merit-based, and we go to them and we make it easy on them so that it's just them and their teammates, so that they can feel that moment of adoration, of respect, and of dominance. And man, I guess now that I think about it, that may be the second thing you asked me earlier.
You might have to add one there.
I think that's the case. My wife said something the other day. She's like, you do realize that part of your legacy is going to be preserving Coach Moore's. And I was like, excuse me. I was like, man, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but somehow he's up there.
Yeah. Oh, he's laughing.
Taylor, didn't you?
He's with Hudson again. Jeez.
Aaron, can you tell me about this guy, Greg Hudson, and give us a peek behind the curtain of how you got to know him and what your relationship with him has been like over the years? Because we obviously got to know him when he came to East Carolina, and then has come back and is a part of our team here at Pirate Radio. But tell us about Greg Hudson here.
It's a great question. On my computer, he's only a box about this big, but I can already start to see the sweat go down because I know where all the bodies are buried. I don't even remember like the moment that we first met, but I absolutely remember the time. And people have to understand the role of a GA is like your uncle. Like, he's going to tell you all the stuff that your daddy is going to tell you, but he's going to translate it. He's going to soften it. And it's this weird hybrid space where you're kind of like a player and kind of like a coach, but not fully either. So there's this Yoda-esque uncle, Obi-Wan Kenobi-ness to him. And he was closer to our age than he was Coach Moore's. So there was this natural kinship. And he was there to learn, but he was also there to teach. And it became kind of this weird two-way street. But figuring out what type of mood he was in, what practice was going to entail, where you stood on the hierarchy of, getting punched in the stomach and your eyes raked. Like, these were vital amounts of information that we needed to have. So boom, then I get drafted, and we circled back many years later when I started calling football games, and, he was at ECU with Skip, and it turned out that there were, 5, 6, 8 games that I got to call. Yeah. And that really kind of fostered our relationship. Did you know I was sober during all the ECU stuff? And It never came up. I don't lead with it, but.
No, I knew.
Yeah. So it kind of was a weird thing when, life has a way of circling back on itself. And It's just like another layer of us getting to know each other as men and as people, where you appreciate. And there's something that happens in recovery when you sit down with a room full of strangers that are drug addicts and alcoholics. Like, you have this common experience. It's the same play. The setting's different, the era's different, the actors and the extras may look different, but it's the same story. And I think there's this baseline understanding of incomprehensible demoralization, of the shame, of the guilt, of the sadness, of the being petrified about being found out, about the creativity, about the scheming and the conniving, and being able to succeed and just find ways to navigate through and be resourceful. Without ever even saying a word, there's just this understanding. So when I found out you were in recovery, and I don't know if I still fully know your story, I still felt like I knew your story. There was a gap between us being at Notre Dame, us seeing at ECU, and where we're at now. I know that there's some things that happened there in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't know the particulars of them, but I certainly understand them and I certainly respect them. And I'm grateful that it took what it took for you to get where you are. No different than me and my journey and the rest of us that got what we needed when we needed it as well.
Absolutely.
Aaron, I don't want to end it like this because I know we're running out of time, but you are a college football analyst now. Your opinion, you sit at a big table up there, have a great platform. If you were the commissioner of college football and could implement some things to make it better, what would that be? And then I guess my second part would be, what advice would you give to East Carolina to get to a better place in space?
Well, those things take time. They also take money, and that seems to be the tail that's wagging the dog. I think COVID really exposed some things within intercollegiate athletics, and if the three of us ran our households like college sports, particularly football, has run theirs, we'd all be sleeping in our cars. Like, the fiscal irresponsibility is unbelievable. And Trev Albert said it best. He said, we don't have a revenue problem. We got a spending problem. So
exactly.
Reining in the spending, I think, would be step one. Having a commissioner that oversees the entirety and looks out for the holistic health of the sport would be another. To have a professionalized model that can allow for education to still be important and relevant. To have some things and annuities set up so that players that come in and play and maybe don't graduate have access to be able to come back, because I didn't know what I didn't know either. And
right.
I'm glad I got my degree when I did, but by the time we realize we've pissed away the greatest opportunity we've ever had, it's too late to do anything about it. So trying to create some mechanisms that can allow that, and with the amount of money that we have, having some sort of pool of money and resources to build hard and soft life skills to allow for us, almost like the NFL Players Association has with the trust. And there's this basket of support services that are earned benefits based on you playing a certain amount of downs in the NFL years, if you will. Having some sort of proportional model that follows that, I think, is the next smart step for us as a sport. Because where we're at now with NIL, where we're at now with it being free agency without rules, we're losing what makes our game great. We're seeing it. There's this struggle right now between culture and cash flow. And people are trying to throw money at things. They're trying to build these super teams. And when the adversity sets, everybody really quickly starts to become, hired guns. And they're these rogue agents where it's, I got my guy. Yeah. And the teams that are going to do the best moving forward are the ones that are going to draft and develop and bring in key free agents with individual players that fit their culture, because we're going to start to see so much fun and parity already. But as we get into November, you're going to start to see depth get challenged. You're going to start to see adversity start to hit. And it's going to be the teams that can navigate those tough times that are going to come out victorious on the other side, not the ones that necessarily had the biggest budget.
Exactly. Well, this was awesome.
Yeah.
How about you guys? This was fantastic, Aaron. Can't thank you enough. And we do want to extend that. I want to have you on again. We've probably got a whole much more we could talk about. It's cheaper to keep her. I know. We'll figure out a way.
You got to talk to my agent, Greg. You one shot, bro. First one's free.
I know who to call, Mrs. Taylor. I will call her, no problem.
Let everybody to fight dirty.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier you launched a podcast and stuff. Where can people find that and find more about Aaron Taylor?
Yeah, it's called Mind Flex with Aaron Taylor, about stretching ourselves beyond our comfort zone so we can get a little bit more of what we want with a greater sense of ease. That's our thought. And really, we listened for 5 years to what student athletes complained about, what their pain points were, what their challenges were. So they spoke, we listened, and now we're delivering what it is they asked for in 3 to 5 minute episodes that are solutions oriented. Do this many times to feel better. Most of what we do is evidence based and can work in as little as 5 minutes. But most of us don't know what we don't know. So we wanted to change that and just create an audio-based resource so they can put their earbuds in. Nobody has to know what they're doing, but give them tangible things. And it really, and those that are in recovery will appreciate the little sprinklings throughout, is at the end of the day, it's me telling my story about what it was like, what I did about it, what it's like now. It just involves meditation. It just involves yoga. It just involves gratitude and God boxes where I write down my fears on what's on the inside, on the outside. It talks about cold tubs and cold immersion and how we can use the ice tubs in our training rooms to calm our central nervous system by using our breath to practice developing resilience. Very accessible, so easy a dumbass old lineman can understand it, but really a resource that is trying to meet young folks where they're at, speak to them a language that they understand so that they can experience more of what they want easier. That doesn't mean it doesn't require work, but that's the intent of MindFlex, is to give them the tools necessary to create the lives they want.
Well, that's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Aaron, you were powerful today. Transparent and great. Thank you.
Awesome,
and humorous.
AT.
The Lou Holtz stuff is beyond great.
We'll get phase 2. We'll revisit here at the end of November and see how things are changing in college football and catch up again. But I love you, man. You're a great teammate, a great friend. And my daughter Casey said to tell you hello. She sent me her picture of you and her at practice back in 2018. So
I love it.
For you guys, watch Aaron Taylor. He's a blast to watch. Check out his podcast. This guy's making a difference.
I appreciate you, man. I'm proud of you, Greg. I know that what you've done is not easy, but we're all rising phoenixes in our own way. And in many respects, your story's just beginning, and it's been a hell of a lot of fun for me to ride shotgun with you, brother, and I look forward to doing more of it.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Love you, brother.
This is the Greg Hudson Show.